Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Comixly Podcast, the official podcast of Comixly.com. Thank you for joining us for episode number 8. In this episode, Angela and I are going to be talking about the Studio Ghibli movie, Princess Mononoke. This is the second Studio Ghibli movie that we've done in the last month or so. We're going to be doing at least one more, maybe two more in the next, try to do that in the next month. These are movies that neither of us are particularly familiar with, and so want to pick a variety of these movies, and talk about them, see what they're about. We watched and talked about My Neighbor Totoro a few episodes back, so you can go back and listen to that episode. So this episode we talked about Princess Mononoke, a little bit of a different movie than My Neighbor Totoro. Kind of an ambiguous movie, not difficult to understand, but just sort of, I think there's a lot that you can take away from this movie. And so I think you'll hear us sort of struggling to figure out exactly what we think this movie is saying, and sort of how is it getting there. I one other thing I want to say, I know we've had some audio issues. They've been sort of up and down in the past couple of weeks. Thank you for staying with us and putting up with that. We had to take a couple breaks this episode because it got moved around throughout the week, and then we recorded it on a Friday night, and so people had to eat and live and do the human things that they needed to do. So there's a couple of sort of audio breaks, and I think you'll hear us maybe be a little bit rushed towards the end because Angela had to go eat, but I don't think it's too bad. I hope not. But anyways, this is our episode on Princess Mononoke. You can watch it on the internet if you know where to find movies in a not entirely legal way. Also available on HBO Max to stream with all of the other Studio Ghibli movies. We hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll be back after this short break. All right, this is take 2, everyone. We just lost the first 10 minutes of our podcast, which is not the first time this has happened, so Angela's a little upset, but this is going to be fine. So this week, we watched Princess Mononoke, the second Studio Ghibli movie. We watched My Neighbor Totoro a couple weeks ago. You can go listen to our podcast about that. And so, I think, if you listen to that, you'll hear that we both really liked that movie. We both quite enjoyed it. And I don't know if we were expecting to enjoy it as much as we did. Do you think that's fair?
I had high hopes.
You had high hopes? Okay. I definitely was not expecting it to enjoy it as much as I did, but I ended up really liking this. Liked how nice, it's a very nice, sort of sheer joyful movie. And so, I guess I put this movie on, one night, and I was like, I'll watch this, I'll go to bed. This would be like a nice movie before bed. And this movie starts, right? It starts in a way that this is it's very much something else. And I think as we watch a couple more Studio Ghibli movies, we'll sort of see what the sort of range of types of movie that this studio has made. But this movie is, very, very different from My Neighbor Totoro, just in tone, but also thematically, right? This is a movie about environmentalism and religion and politics and empire, and how people are treated in society, and the sort of nature of or the sort of man versus nature conflict. That's sort of very different movie. And I think we kind of want to be able to talk pretty freely just about the thing, just sort of what interested us in this movie. So Angie's gonna start off by just giving us a brief recap. And I guess if you haven't seen it, like I think we would both strongly recommend like go watch this movie. You can find it on the internet. If you know where to look, you can find it on HBO Max. Go watch this movie, preferably with the Japanese voice acting and the subtitles. Is that how you watched it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that last time. I think that's really the better way. I didn't even give the American dub a chance this time, or the English dub a chance this time. So but yeah, Angie's gonna go. What happens in this movie?
So I'm probably going to butcher my recollection of it. But here's what stood out in my mind.
Okay.
So it starts. There is this dude, Ashitaka, and he is like a prince in his village, and then there's this creature that comes that, like, I think his name was Nago, the wild boar.
Yes.
And it's a wild boar, and he looks not great. Because he's a demon.
When we first see it, it's this like writhing worm monster. It's very unsettling, actually. Like, not great to look at by any means.
Right. So what happens is Ashitaka ends up killing Nago, but in killing him, Ashitaka gets like a cut on his arm, and it's revealed that this cut has cursed him. He's going to die. Things are not looking great for him. Side note, when he killed the boar, he found that there was this weird object that they found inside of the boar. That's important for later.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially he sets off on this quest to find a god to, I believe, to ask him to lift the curse.
I forget if it's to lift the curse specifically, or if it's to just go find out why this animal was cursed in the first place.
Right.
I forget. It's one of those two. Or it might be like both of them. But he's definitely told like you have to go to the west to figure this out.
Mm-hmm. So he's like going on his journey. He's riding his like elk.
Yeah, he has like
Yakel.
a red elk. Yeah.
Yakel is my favorite character. And he comes across, and so side story, there's this lady, Boshi, who runs the Ironworks village, and she is hunting the wolves specifically, or just any animal in the forest. I don't know.
So this is where we very much get into like what the movie's about.
I guess in this scene, she was mainly hunting a wolf.
Yes, I think initially she's hunting the wolf because they have sort of been causing trouble for Lady Boshi, but the wolves are sort of working on behalf of the deer god, who sort of tends to or oversees the forest, and she's also interested in killing the deer god. She's working with this other character whose name is Jigo, and he's sort of keeps putting it into her ear that she needs to figure out a way to kill the deer god. So she, and more broadly, the Ironworks is trying to they're gonna like use the forest to help feed the fires of the Ironworks, right? They're making guns, specifically muskets, and so they need the wood from the forest, right? So specifically they're interested in like the resources offered by the forest, which has angered the wolves who are causing them to be enemies.
Yes. So, while Lady Boshi and her men are fighting these wolves, 2 men get injured, and Ashitaka later finds them, brings them back to the village, and that's sort of how he gets mixed up in everything that happens from there. Would this be a good time to introduce San?
Yeah, I think so, right? Because he's sort of, right, he's introduced to the village, kind of becomes aware of what they want, and then San shows up. Yeah.
And so San is this girl who has been raised by wolves. She's a human, but she doesn't like humans because they've been destroying her forest. What's this about? So when it says that, like, she's mad about something that happened to her tribe, it means, like, her tribe of wolves, right?
I think so, yes.
Because for, like, a really long time, I thought it was, like, oh, her tribe of, like, family. But
no,
then I was like, wait.
No, I think it's the wolves. Because I don't think she remembers any of her, like, family, right? Because I think they say at one point that her family, like, abandoned her. And so the wolves found her and raised her. So I don't think she has any memory of...
Right. So San is essentially, she wants to kill Lady Boshi. And Lady Boshi wants to kill San because San is sort of like a nuisance to her because she's in the way of, like, Lady Boshi getting, like, the forest. So it's these essentially, like, nature against, like, industrial man. And Ashitaka, he sees San, sorry, and immediately likes her, I guess.
Yeah, I think he's very,
he's taken with her.
Intrigued with her.
Right.
Because she's, like, right, the first time you see...
You're thinking about what I'm thinking, huh?
Yes. If you didn't know that this movie was, like, doing some stuff, the first time you see San, she is sucking the blood out of a wolf and, like,
spitting it out.
Is spitting it out, and it's all smeared across her face, and you're like, oh, we're doing this.
And Ashitaka's like, yes, please.
Yes. It's like more, I need to know about what's going on there. Yeah, I never even thought about that. That is the first time he sees her, and he is not like, huh. No, but then, yeah, the second time, right, he, like, understands, right, the second time is she attacks the ironworks, and she is, like, she's very, like, this very formidable warrior, right? She gets into it with, like, she, like, manages to, like, sneak all the way in and, like, take down some guards, and then she's, like, fighting Lady Boshi, right? So she's this very formidable thing, or this very, very formidable force opposing Lady Boshi. But I guess that's kind of an interesting question, right? Like, what does San see initially that
what does Ashitaka see initially?
Or Ashitaka see initially that sort of, why is he like so intrigued by her? I guess that's not something I really thought about while I was watching it. Did you have any thoughts about that?
I don't know, maybe it's just because, like, I feel like because there was that one chick that gave him the necklace, which when I saw that Ashitaka was falling for San, I was like, man, rip that girl. But maybe Ashitaka just, like, wanted maybe more than that girl in the village, you know, like, San's different, she's like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think, right, there's some, like, implications from some characters that Ashitaka talks to, like, on his journey, on his way there, where he comes from this sort of, I don't know if mythic or legendary is quite the right word, but he comes from this tribe that is known to have, like, a very strong connection to nature and animals, right? And you see that in the connection that he has with his elk. So I wonder if, just kind of seeing, right, even though that initial he's in the initial moment when she's, tending to the like injured wolf in a way that we seems perhaps kind of odd, if he sort of appreciate, right, he understands that like animals and nature are sacred to her. And I think even though he's not initially like negative or put off by Lady Boshi and like what he sees in the ironworks, I want, that sort of, he sees San as part of the forest, right? Or not, at least not part of the sort of the industrialized world. And I wonder if that is sort of what causes him to be like, I want to figure out exactly what she wants, right? Or what she is all about. Yeah. So I guess I think, that might be part of it. But so, and then, okay, so then to finish up the summary, right? So he meets San, then he sort of goes off with her. He sort of goes off with her in the forest. Broadly speaking, sort of, right? The rest, or not the rest, but the next, like, the middle part of this movie, right, is sort of him beginning to understand both sides of this conflict really well, right?
Mm-hmm.
They devote a lot of time to figuring out exactly what the motivations and desire of the humans are, what the motivation and desire of the animals are, right? And before things do come to a final conflict between the animals of the forest and the deer god and the humans. There's sort of this final confrontation that is, broadly speaking, sort of ends happily, but or ends does not end in entire destruction, but doesn't sort of doesn't sort of have a concrete answer, right? I don't think this movie answers specifically like who is right or like what is right.
Yeah, I feel like it's more about finding that balance.
Yeah,
between the two.
yeah, absolutely right. Or just even about like the idea that finding that balance is really hard, right? Like that is this sort of like existential conflict in how do man and nature find this balance. So you put here, right, in our notes, something that was interesting, right? So you said that the narrative is more interpretive than what you're usually used to. So what were you thinking when you wrote that?
Because, like, I'm just thinking to, like, movies that I watch where it's just like, okay, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this. And, like, what's going on all the time because there's, like, there's some way of you're being told what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But I found in these movies, also I saw this in My Neighbor Totoro, but I think it was just easier to understand in that one, that, like, they don't, like, tell you, like, oh, I'm going into the forest to go talk to this wolf about this.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I noticed this because I, like, happened to look down at my phone for, like, a second, and then I was like, what is going on?
Oh, yeah, I was rewinding
yeah.
this. I was, like, just jumping, like, back, like, 30 seconds, like, this whole movie, just to be like, okay, what exactly are they saying right there? Yeah, I was doing that the whole time.
Yeah, and I just thought it was interesting, because it made it harder to, like, follow,
mm-hmm.
but it kind of just, like, it demands more of your attention then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think, right, in a sort of like in the very like granular way, like I think you make a good point. Like characters aren't, no one's like announcing like, oh, I'm gonna go do this right now, right? And it's more characters are are always talking about like what they're thinking and feeling, and then just like what they're doing, right? Because the movie expects you to understand that, right? I think it is sort of right. It's asking. It's trying to more have a conversation, right? To have this like open-ended conversation than to like say anything specific, right? It is more interpretive than just like I don't know, like didactic, maybe just like telling you, right? It's raising a bunch of questions instead of saying anything, or instead of saying something like very very specific, maybe.
And like even in the way where like how we were confused about what exactly Ashitaka's quest is, like they did tell us, sort of, but like we still like aren't 100% sure.
Yeah.
And then like the captain mentioned like with clear eyes or something. And I was like, what does that mean? But I think that's maybe like a challenge that like the film like wants you to think about.
Well, I think,
or maybe I just didn't understand it. And then
well, so they no, but you're right, because they meant, so they a couple of I think they mentioned like clear eyes, and then they also mentioned like being able to see without hate in your heart, right? And I think, right, so there's this point at the end of the movie, and I'm not exactly sure if I'm gonna like get this point all the way home, but there's a point at the end of the movie where Lydia Boshi and some of the like imperial Japanese forces led by this character named Jigo, who Ashitaka met earlier in the movie, and he's sort of I heard him described in one of the summaries as a con man, but he is sort of working on behalf of the Emperor of Japan, or the ruler of Japan at the time. But so him and Lady Eboshi are moving on the deer god to kill him, but the Ironworks has come under attack by some samurai in the area who have been like in this constant battle with Lady Eboshi, right? So he's like, you go back and take care of the village, and I'll sort of go deal with the deer god. And Lady Eboshi is sort of like, well, you why would you do that, or like what am I supposed to do in this situation? And he says, I'm pretty sure it's in that moment, right? He says something to her about like seeing without hate in your heart, right? Because I think there's like a moment there where Ashitaka isn't necessarily sure what is like better for everyone in this situation, right? What's better for the animals? What is better, the animals of the forest? What is better for the people trying to like make a living and, you know, like build a community? And right, but this, you know, he's not saying like I'm gonna do this or I'm gonna do this, but he's saying like, in order to think about this, or in order to like even be operating in this situation, like I need to be able to see without having hate for one side, right? Which is something that is a struggle for characters on either side of this, right? Because the animals hate the humans and the humans hate the animals. And like, I think this movie, more than saying like preserve nature or like, you know, use nature for your ends and purposes, it's like understand that sort of one or the other just isn't useful in any way at all. I don't know, what do you I think that's what he's right when like, I think, yeah, because they say like clear eyes and like seeing without hate in your heart a couple times, and I think that's what that's trying to get at a little bit, maybe.
And I think like he just really just wanted peace between the two, like the forest and like the village. And like however they could find that, he wanted them to like do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Were you reminded at all of Lord of the Rings when you were watching this movie?
Maybe the scenery.
Maybe this okay, because I even initially when he comes across the Ironworks initially, right? He has rescued these two men and he's taking them back to the village, and as he's like rowing across the lake, he right this like village, it's like has these big wooden poles as it's like huge these tall walls, but then like coming out from the base is all these like jagged spikes, right? It's like wood carved into these like jagged spikes, right? To like guard people off. And it's very much contrasted, right, with this like beautiful forest. And I thought a lot about the two towers, right? When there's Isengard, right? There's this big ugly tower, and the orcs are running this like huge mine, and then right there's this like ancient forest filled with trees that are alive, right, filled with like living spirits. And I was like, oh, there's, I know Tolkien wrote that a while ago, but I was I was kind of wondering if any of the imagery from like the Lord of the Rings movie or the Two Towers was inspired, because even there's like a scene I think where they are sort of chopping down an edge like just the very edge of the forest, which is something that you sort of see in Lord of the Rings when the orcs are chopping down just the edge of the forest,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like right in that movie as well, right? There's this very much less ambiguous, right? Because like Saruman is obviously like evil, right? And there's no right
Yeah.
there's not very much redeeming about him or the orcs, but there's this sort of nature versus industry sort of theme, and what is being lost, what is being killed off when you kill nature without sort of considering the value of what you're destroying, in like the value beyond a monetary sense, the value in a like ecological sense, the value in a like spiritual sense.
But maybe that would be this would be a good segue to talk about Lydia Boshi.
Yeah, what do you
So
yeah.
background on her, she is like essentially runs the Ironworks, and she's taken in lepers, and I also believe I think they were prostitutes, right?
So I read that they were that's what I read that they were supposed to be. I didn't read it that way initially.
No.
But I read that that's what they're supposed to be representing, right? But she like yeah, so she has people affected with leprosy, and then she has these women who might be I think they're supposed to be interpreted as sex workers, but who like she has given them a place. They are very much a part of the village. They do just as right. They work different hours than the men, right? Because they have to be like kept apart for traditional reasons, but they're very much a part of like what is going on in the village, and they have a say in it.
Yeah, so there's that, which is like one thing that sort of maybe gives the idea that like maybe Lady Boshi isn't like all like super 100% evil. Another thing that I noticed was she really wants to like tear down the forest and everything, but then you see in the village she like keeps a garden of her own, which sort of like maybe gives me the idea that like she isn't, not that it makes it like any less like you probably shouldn't do that, but she isn't like trying to like destroy the forest out of like malice or anything. She's doing it because she believes that that's what's best for her like village, which I think is also sort of like another way that you're sort of challenged to like ask yourself like, is Lady Boshi like really like 100% evil, or just like maybe like 80, or like
yeah. And I think you see yeah, the movie's absolutely, I think, is asking you to like consider these questions, right? But like one thing I was wondering a little bit, right? So she keeps this garden, and she say no one comes in here, um, and you have to pass through it to get to this building where the right you walk in, and there's like people, and they're covered in bandages, right? And you're meant to understand that these people are suffering from leprosy, and then they even begin telling uh Ashitaka, right, how Lady Boshi took them in and treated them with kindness and respect when like no one else could, right? But then what is the thing that she's having them do? She's like she has put these people to work making guns, right? Making weapons of destruction. Okay, so we took a quick break right there for people needing to eat reasons, but we're back. We're gonna try to pick up. I think I was trying to say something about Lady Boshi, right? Right, she has taken in these people affected by leprosy. They greatly, right, they have a huge amount of respect for her because no one has treated them like humans before, which is what she has done for them. But even then, the thing she has put them to work doing is making guns, making weapons. And so I think even before you get to the fact that Lady Boshi wants to, she wants to use the forest for her own ends, right? For her own like monetary and industrial ends, right? But even before you get to that, right? She is sort of she's compromised in a certain way, right? Because she obviously has these sort of more. She is trying to build a more inclusive and just community, right? But even then, the thing that she is putting the people in that community to work doing is like making weapons, right? So it's but the movie's not like judge. It doesn't ever. I don't know. It's never like
it doesn't paint either side as like the wrong side.
Yeah.
Did you see the note I added there about the trailers?
I did. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I saw this just like on an article that there were 2 trailers made. There was a Japanese trailer, and then there was an American trailer. And in the Japanese trailer, the portrayal in the trailer was like more about the deeper complexities of the movie. So like it talks about it highlights how Ashitaka wants peace, and it like talks about San and like her like how she is neither a human nor an animal, and has like it talks about the movie, or like presents it on a deeper level. Whereas in the American trailer, the trailer presents the movie much more boiled down as to just, it's like Lady Boshi is the villain trying to destroy the forest, and San is like the hero. Which it says that Hayao Miyazaki, I don't think he maybe liked it because that's not what he was trying to portray. And there also was a note about how Hayao Miyazaki didn't want his films to be streamed because to stream them implies a level of speed and accessibility to anyone at any time, but he wanted his films to be watched with purpose and an interest in understanding the deeper message. That was taken from an article on Medium.com. Joey, you should probably put that in the show notes so I don't get...
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll put that.
That was not my original thought.
Yeah, no, but it's right. There's some actually other like interesting stuff about this movie. When they were trying to translate it, right, or when they were trying to adapt it for the American audience, right, about like how he had supposedly, right, so he was dealing with Harvey Weinstein, right, who's not, right, he's a like shitty, horrible person, right, but back when he was trying to get this movie made, there was a story going around that like he would send notes about like how he thought they were butchering his movie on samurai swords, which he said that he didn't send the samurai swords, but his like producer did. But like there was a very contentious relationship between I'm not exactly I don't know what the studio is that was producing it, or sort of like producing it and putting it into theaters in America, but right, it was a very contentious process all the way through, right? And I think that trailer gets at it, right? Like this right, that it, like just that idea is that this movie had to be dumbed down for an American audience, like, and like I don't know if that had to be the case, but it's like a shame because it totally misrepresents what this movie is. If you're just like it's a good versus evil, or one side versus the other, because it's yeah, it's way more complicated than that, right? And you see that in Lydia Boshi, you see that in the animals, who we should get to in a second. You see that in Ashitaka. But yeah, to get back to finish up with Lady Boshi, I don't think the movie, no, you know, people push back on her, but the movie never like is explicitly judging her, right? It's letting her sort of be a moral agent and make her own decisions, right? And letting her be someone who helps people whose society has sort of looks down upon or cast out, but also sort of being the sort of industrialist, right? Or being someone who's motivated by money, or like is you know, focused on like you know, because like being a weapons dealer, right? Like she can do both things at the same time, and the movie doesn't, right? She's not like the movie doesn't like diminish her, right? It lets her be really complicated, which is great, right? I love that it does that. One thing that I was thinking a lot about with her, and I didn't see this anywhere. Like I was trying to look for other articles, like someone else must have written this. And not to say that they haven't, I might have just not found it when I was Googling for like 15 minutes, but I was kind of thinking like, one of the things I was thinking about was, so she's constantly talking to this character, Jigo, right? Who is sort of working, or like he is sort of communicating with her on behalf of the Emperor of Japan, right? And it's from him that we learn that the Emperor of Japan wants the head of the deer god, right, to sort of bestow you know, power and like, you know, yes, to like sort of give the Emperor of Japan power, right, to give him it would be this like, I'm not gonna think of a better way to say that, right? It's for he wants power, whatever. And so Jigo is kind of like driving her to do this, right? Because I'm not exactly sure if that is what she wants to do, right? She wants to like get rid of the wolves, and she wants to be able to like use the forest, but I don't know if she's like interested in killing the deer god exactly, right? If going to those measures. But he pushes her to do this, and so, right, that is the climax of the movie, right? It's Lady Boshi going into the forest to kill the deer god. And you know, something I was thinking about, right, is if she was sort of left to run the ironworks as she wanted, without sort of this pressures from the Empire of Japan, right? Without pressures from these rulers telling her what to do, and without sort of having to worry about these samurai who are continually attacking her village, right? Like what could she do then, right? And so I was thinking like, maybe, you know, I think there's a case to be made that like somehow it is empire, right? It is this like over this like, you know, this power structure trying to sort of manipulate and control its subjects, right? If it's pushing them to fight and pushing them to like be in conflict, right? Like would ironworks and the forest sort of be able to operate in peace, find some sort of balance without, right, the empire sitting there kind of pushing them into conflict, right? And like, right, what does that mean for like the people affected with leprosy that she's taking care of, right? What does that mean for the sex workers who are sort of she is employing, right? Would that, right? Because even for Lady Boshi, right, like the men and the women are kept separate, right? Like she can't push against that norm, right? And the people affected with leprosy can't sort of be a full part of her community, right? And I'm wondering, right, is that her? Is that the pressure from whatever the sort of cultural norms were in Japan at that time, and sort of what would she have been able to do without that sort of those outside forces, weighing on her, and so I think maybe there's even a critique of like empire's government in there as well in this movie, but I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about that before we kind of move on from Lydia Boshi?
No, not really. I don't think I have much more to add on her.
Okay. We should talk about a little bit about the animals, I think. The other part of this movie, right? So and Princess, I guess we really haven't spent a lot of time talking about Princess or San, Princess Mononoke. She's sort of living in the, right, she's been raised by these wolves, right? And they understand on sort of a physical level that she's human, right? But in a more like metaphorical sense, right? They've raised her to be a wolf. She sees herself as a wolf, and they see her as a wolf, right? They see her as one of her. And I think they, right, and this even causes the wolves to sort of be, right, the two sort of groups of animals who are in this movie are the wolves and the boars. And this sort of even puts the wolves in conflict with the other animals who are like, well, why are you accepting this human, right? Why have you taken her in? And like, I guess, how do you think San's presence, right? Do you think that sort of pushes this movie more towards like, oh no, there can be coexisting? Or do you think it's like, you can only, right? Because she can only kind of coexist, not because she's like lost her humanity, right? But she is separated from it in a certain sense, right? She sees herself very much as the character, right? San, right? She very much sees herself as a wolf. The wolves see her as a wolf, right? As one of them. And so I'm wondering, do you think she sort of, how do you think she, right? We've been sort of talking about how the movie doesn't specifically come down on one side as far as like nature and humans sort of like what, like, or doesn't provide a specific answer about how they can like coexist or live in peace. How do you think San, I guess I'm like, do you think San complicates that, right? Because they show this human person living in nature, living as a part of nature, right? But she's separated sort of from her own humanity a little bit, right? She doesn't see herself as human. Do you think that sort of like her presence or the way that she operates in this movie sort of pushes it towards like this idea, like the only way that humans can exist with nature is if they kind of like lose themselves to it? Would you agree with that, or do you think it's like her being pushed, her as like, opposed to Ashitaka, who has this more of like this middle path idea?
I don't know. I feel like she like would refuse to see herself as human, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But like to me, that was just like, well, you are human. That's sort of just something that you have to accept. And I was a little bit disappointed at the end of the movie when she was like, Ashitaka, I love you, but like, fuck humans. She didn't say it like that, but it was sort of just like, it was a bit disappointing. I don't know if that's just because like I'm accustomed to like, and then they get together and live happily ever after, because like obviously like that's what I wanted for them, but instead they agreed to part ways.
Yeah. But I think that ending would have been like disingenuous to everything that happened before it, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying it was like it shouldn't have happened. I'm just saying that like it was still like but I don't know. I feel like I like what Ashitaka represents more than what San represented.
Okay, yeah. I think I would agree with that, right? Because I think the movie isn't, in the same way it's never saying like Lydia Boshi is right or wrong, right? I don't think it's ever saying that like San is right or wrong, right? I think the movie shows her as being like very brave and very strong, but I don't think it ever sort of comes down on her side, right? Because the sort of lengths that she has gone to sort of separate herself from her human identity, right? She's sort of, I guess I don't know exactly. I don't know if it ever like gets this specific. Has she sort of like lost something, right? And is that even a sort of is the only way to like exist with nature is to just is to sort of like lose something of your of what, I don't know, what makes you human. I don't know. I'm just kind of coming to this thought right now. I didn't think about that too much in the movie. But I don't think, right? I don't think the movie ever, right? I think there's like a version, right, in a different movie, right? It shows San as being very like feral and sort of not unattractive in a physical way, but just unattractive in a character sense, right? But that, I don't think that's the case, right? Because she's like, she's extremely smart. She stands up for herself. She knows why she does things, right? And she can like push back on Ashitaka, right, when she needs to, and say like, no, I believe this, and I do or do not like agree with what you're trying to do, right? So I don't think it ever, right, because I think there's a different version of this movie which shows her to be kind of this ugly character and sort of in a certain way is judging her, but this movie never does that, which I really appreciate that. So do you have any other big things that you want to hit before we
think so.
Wrap up? No.
I mean, I would definitely recommend that like people watch it.
Yeah. So I want to let's wrap up on this, right? So like right, this movie ends, right, with the right at some point lady I forget exactly who beheads the forest god, but it's beheaded and the forest sort of begins dying, but then Ashitaka and the wolves manage to like let the forest god find its head, and as it sort of dissolves into the ground, everything begins being green again, right? And so some of the final dialogue between San and Ashitaka, right? She's gonna go live in the forest with the wolves, and he's gonna go live in the ironworks, and they'll see each other at some times. But one of the final things they say to each other is even if San says, even if all the trees go back, it won't be his forest anymore, the forest spirit of dead. And Ashitaka says, never. He is life itself. He isn't dead. He's here with now, telling us it's time for both of us to live, right? And I think, right, that's this moment where this movie could have been like, no, this is sort of what exactly we're trying to say, right? But it comes down with just like, this acknowledgement that sort of life is the thing that matters, right? Life living with like dignity and purpose. And but it's right, so it's not sort of saying exactly what the right way is there, right? But like acknowledging that like there is this kind of struggle, and that struggle will continue, and it's sort of maybe part of us, right? It's part of our existence. So I guess I like that ending, and I like how that is up into interpretation, but it does have this sense of hope kind of wrapped up with it.
It gave me Tale of the Time Being vibes.
Oh, okay.
Which,
yeah.
if you don't know what you're talking about, go listen to the first episode. Okay, bye.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so Andrew's got to eat, so we're gonna finish talking about that. We're gonna take a short break, and then we're gonna come back with just a couple of things that we've been enjoying this week. We'll see you in a second. All right, and we're back. Ange, what's been making you happy this week? What have you been enjoying?
I have been watching a lot of... Are you familiar with the YouTubers Game Grumps?
Yes, I do know Game Grumps.
Have you watched their content? Are you familiar with them?
They've done a couple episodes with Thomas
Middleditch
and Schwartz. Yeah, I've seen a couple of those episodes.
Well, I've been watching them a lot. I was introduced to them back in high school, but I got back into it, and I recently watched... For those of you who don't know, they are like... They stream video games. They're not that good at video games, but they're funny, so that makes up for it.
It's not video game streaming that's about the video games.
You don't go for the video games. Yeah. But I was watching A Way Out, which it was really interesting. It feels like a really fun game to play because it's like a 2-person game and you collaborate with one another. Mm-hmm. And honestly, it would be something that you and I could play together, like for real.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know.
Do you know what it is?
I know what game that is. Yeah.
I would play it with you.
Okay, maybe we'll do that.
Because it looks easy too.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
That's what I recommend. They're funny.
Right. Okay. Do they like get into funny situations in that game? There's some funny moments in that game. Okay.
They're just funny. How their banter. It's Kelvin, he falls asleep every night listening to because they have sleep aids where it's just them joking around and laughing. So I hear them every night as I fall asleep.
Very good. Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, and if the Middleditch and Schwartz episodes are pretty good because Middleditch and Schwartz are really funny. They're really fun. They were playing some dumb game. They might have been playing a Jackbox game, which are sort of like these... Oh, they were playing Quiplash. Okay. All right. Nice. So Game Grumps. My thing for this week is a cooking recommendation. Have you seen the Chef Show on Netflix?
Yeah, I watch it sometimes.
Okay. I really love that show. I love how they approach food, specifically because the guy who makes it, Jon Favreau, right? He made this movie called Chef, and in the lead up to that movie, right, he really learned how to cook. And so who is the other guy on the Chef Show? It's Jon Favreau. Who's his mentor?
I don't know. All I remember is that Wolfgang Puck was in one of them.
Yeah, Wolfgang Puck was in the previous season. His mentor is Roy Choi. And so it's, Jon Favreau is he is always sort of adopting this, he's always the learner. He's always the student, right? Even though he's this very accomplished filmmaker, this is very much his hobby. And he's so enthusiastic to learn. And right, his the people that he knows gets him into these really amazing kitchens, and the opportunity to cook a bunch of cool stuff and learn a bunch of cool stuff. But even just then there'll just be episodes where him and Roy are in the the test kitchen, and Roy's just like spitting knowledge at him, and it's like, I don't know, they're just like whipping stuff up. Those are probably my favorite episodes because they're like pretty impromptu, but there's actually a lot of like really technical knowledge in there. So I would recommend, in the newest season, they do like an Italian. They make like a lasagna, they make a spaghetti, they make meatballs. So they do a bunch of Italian food, and they make Roy calls it his $4 tomato or $4 spaghetti, I think. So I have like I've made it twice now because it's really good. I saw it and I was like, I love noodles anyway, so I made it twice now. It's very good. I'm gonna put a link to the recipe. The like someone on foodandwine.com like watched the show and made a recipe, so I'm gonna link that in the show notes. But it's like, it's really good. It's a little bit like complicated. There's a lot of different parts, but it tastes really nice at the end. And it's like it's not that type of spaghetti. It's like the sauce is like this sort of like thick thing that like coats the noodles in this really nice way. Because sometimes spaghetti is like runny and watery, but it's like this nice thick sauce that really like coats the noodles. It's awesome. Nice. So that is me for this week. We're gonna be back next week with another episode. Hope everyone enjoyed us. You can we haven't done this. We should start getting the habit of doing this. And you can follow the show on Twitter at comicslypodcast.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Joey Joey Glowacki GLOWACKY. And then Angela, what's your Twitter handle?
I don't know. I don't use it.
You don't know your own Twitter handle?
I don't use it.
I have it right here. Well, you're gonna start using it, maybe. Angela's
prefer you follow me on Instagram.
Oh, what's your Instagram then?
I don't know. Hang on.
Angela's Twitter is Angela_Glowacki GLOWACKI.
That's how you actually spell Glowacki.
That's how you actually spell Glowacki. Yeah, this will all be in the show notes.
Yeah, my Instagram is glow.angela.
Glow.angela. Okay.
Yes.
And then the music for the music that you heard in this episode is the song Something Elated by the band Broke for Free. You can find their music on the Free Music Archive. All right, that's everything. Thanks for listening to us, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.